Don't give a fuck when you land or not, just let him go. Don't worry about you, you're gonna be a shitty fight, but you gotta let punches go. Last round. You can't wait until they get, if you miss it, bang, go right back. And don't take 30 seconds to start another fight.
Alexander, I'm the best ever. There's never been anybody like me. I'm Sonny Liston, I'm Jack Dempsey, there's no one like me. I'm from Nairport, there's no one that can match me. My style is impeccable, my defense is impregnable. Look at that combination.
I kept telling him he had no punch, he couldn't hit, he's swinging like a sissy, he's missing, let me see your box. I hadn't started dancing yet. A tremendous sensational first round, and Hearns gets hurt. Hearns got stunned. Pacquiao was stunned early in the round. Great first round. Incredible. Perhaps one of the best in middleweight history.
That black guy, he hits hard.
Fire!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Hands of Fire Boxing Talk. I'm your host, George Dampier, writer and reporter for RealCombatMedia.com. And today, we will be following up with the ever comical and just mysterious publication of Danny Garcia. We'll also wrap up, well, not wrap up, but get into the Crawford and Postol pay-per-view numbers, and also Andre Ward will be having his fight against Alexander Brand this weekend on HBO. A lot of these fights, man, are just coming back to back to back, and it's easy to forget, which fight's coming up. But, this is what I always wanted through the summer, was just consistent fights. And it's definitely working out in that way. But, of course, the main attraction through this past weekend was Frampton versus Leo Santa Cruz, who suffered a defeat by the hands of the Irishman Carl Frampton via majority decision. Definitely blew my prediction out the water. Now, I guess for being on record, man, I don't have much of a good record. Last week, or the week prior, I had made a prediction for Victor Postol to win. But like I said, that was really just due off certain abilities. Well, not the abilities, but physical characteristics that Postol had over Terrence Crawford, which one not really being so much because Crawford ended up being coming into the fight heavier. So that was one, but like I said, I was wrong, but did want Crawford to win, so I don't really feel bad in picking Victor Postol, because like I said, I wanted him to win, so it's not really much of a loss there. However, I did say that Leo Santa Cruz would be too big and too aggressive for Carl Frampton, who has been on the ground before by lesser fighters. That is Carl Frampton. And through this fight, there was, through the build-up, Carl Frampton had, was saying by his chances, his best chance in this fight would be the fact that, Leo Santa Cruz never fought a technically good fighter as Frampton, which I definitely agreed with that, and B, that he hit harder than any fighter that Santa Cruz had faced up to that point, and that for me was still in question. However, man, in this fight, definitely turned out the skill was definitely the edge that he had over Leo Santa Cruz. Now let's just jump into the full review of this fight. Now, Leo Santa Cruz did seem a bit confused right off the get by Carl Frampton's mobility, and that's what I did kind of point to toward the end of last week's podcast. Was the fact that Leo Santa Cruz was going to run into the wrong fighter. One being, a really high-class fighter. I kind of use that term a little bit loosely here. I still, even after this win with Carl Frampton, he's definitely a good fighter. But I'm just talking in terms of skill. Leo Santa Cruz, comes from the East LA area where, he's just met with brawl after brawl, and that's just right up his alley. But like I said before, he's going to run into somebody that's going to be too smart for him. And on the side of, going through consistent brawls, he's going to run into somebody who is stronger than him. So it was either one or the other. In this case, it was both. Even Carl Frampton was able to actually had Leo Santa Cruz hurt off a counter punch. I believe it was a left hook that he caught Leo Santa Cruz in the middle of an exchange. And throughout this fight, that was really what Frampton did really well with. He consistently, he was even willing to get into the wheelhouse of Santa Cruz, which, just like I had mentioned with Benavidez, Leo Santa Cruz is a tall fighter who only fights one way, and it's a dangerous way just because of what he's giving what he's giving up into that fight. He's a taller fighter. He should be able to use his jab a lot better, even though he did outland Frampton throughout this fight through jabs. But overall, power punching, Frampton had the advantage because he was consistently slipping, creating angles, and countering off those missed shots by Santa Cruz. And, man, he just looked so good in there. Definitely a great performance by Carl Frampton. It was always... one thing was always in question was his stamina, and in a way he was a bit more vulnerable toward the last rounds. I believe Santa Cruz had his best rounds and landed some really good shots in the 11th round. But through the beginning of this fight, I had, it was pretty much all Frampton, really. And then Santa Cruz kind of came on a little bit toward the, I would say, 5th round. Kind of made things a bit even going into the 10th. But I still had Frampton up by at least a round or two into the 10th, and then gave Santa Cruz the 11th. But Frampton was able to close it out, and a really good, how can I say, I want to say dominant, but he definitely made his mark as far as, how he, or at least closed out the fight. Let's just say he closed out the fight pretty well. Landed some hard shots, and was able to get the majority decision. Now, the judges' scorecards had it, one judge had it 114, a draw, and the remaining two had it 116 to 112 and 117, 111. Now, some will find that those last two cards a bit wider than, what they really feel. I kind of had it around the 115, 113 area. So, And that was just being generous. There was a few rounds where, one fighter would do really good through the first 2 minutes, and then the other would have a really good last minute of the round. And, I was kind of trying to be a little bit generous with a couple of those. So maybe, I don't know, maybe that's not too bad of a card. So, it's whatever. Now, and I also mentioned last week that I kind of wasn't taking too much value into this fight. Was because of the, how can I say, the inability to have either of these fighters fight Guillermo Rigondeaux. I was pretty harsh in saying that they both ducked him. With Frampton, that's kind of it applies a bit more just because he moved up just to get away from that fight, I feel. He says that he couldn't make the weight. I don't know. He would definitely look like he could at least still drop maybe, 4 pounds? Was this at 130? No, that might have been too much. Either way, I do believe Guillermo Rigondeaux said he wouldn't mind going up to 126 to fight Frampton. So I don't really see the problem. And of course, Santa Cruz, he has a few moments of just utter bullshit coming out of his mouth sometimes. Like even at the end of this fight, after the cards were announced, or the winner was announced, Jim Gray had asked Leo Santa Cruz, his thoughts on the fight, and he totally didn't take any responsibility. I mean, or at least didn't give Frampton as much credit that he deserved. He, blamed that the crowd was reacting more to what he was doing, and that, he wants a rematch in Los Angeles, which that's such a bitch thing to say. Like, oh, well, my crowd's going to react to me a little bit more, so I'll win that. That's bullshit, because, here, let's go down through these punch stats. When it comes to total punches, Santa Cruz landed 255, throwing 1,002 punches. Frampton landed 242 while throwing 668. So clearly the more accurate one, even though Santa Cruz lands by 12 more punches. Even in terms of the jab, which you would think Santa Cruz would do more on, or he definitely at least landed more with 64 and throwing 451. Frampton landed 36 and threw 205. But here is where Frampton really won the fight when it comes to power punches. Leo Santa Cruz landed 119, throwing a total of 551. And Frampton landed 206 while throwing less with 463, 44%. Now, it's like I said, you can't just keep throwing volume and just expecting that to be your key to victory. And Leo Santa Cruz has to learn that. And, and that's why I've never really thought much of Leo Santa Cruz, coming up. He was just a high volume puncher who, again, like Benavidez, fights against his interest, or at least fights against his physical capabilities. He can do more. He just doesn't. He's stubborn in that way. Now, let's see. Frampton, of course, he's looking forward to maybe trying to get a unification fight with Flanagan. No real mention, really, of Guillermo Rigondeaux, of course. But I believe also who also fought on this undercard was the return of Mikey Garcia, who fought Elio Rojas. Of course, not really much of a name. He was 24-2 going into this fight, and Mikey Garcia just wiped the floor with him in a TKO, I believe, in the 5th round. Definitely, he still looked sharp, having a 2-year layoff. Power was still there, and definitely able to still pick his shots extremely well. But then again, this was the warm-up fight, so can't take full, validity into this. So, but it's just good to see Mikey Garcia back, and, that's really all that matters. Also, Paulie Malignaggi fought on here. Doesn't really need mentioning of much because, it's whatever. He's hopefully retiring. And, he's just trying to fight somebody that he can beat so he can at least go on top in Brooklyn. Hopefully. That is done. This is the last we hear of Paulie Malignaggi in the ring because he definitely offers nothing. And it was almost a little rougher of a fight than I believe he at least had planned going in. And also, Ivan Redcash had suffered his first defeat against Tevin Farmer, who just looked amazing in there. Super slick, great boxing skill, combination, puncher, all of it. He just did it all well. And it's unfortunate because Ivan is a Styles Make Fight promoter fighter. So, it was the SMF brand on his shorts. That was good to see. Good shout out to my friend Chris Alexander, who was able to work that out. Unfortunately, didn't get the win. So, a little sorry about that. But, with Tevin Farmer, well-deserved fight. It was unanimous, so there's nothing really to question there. However, for the views of the night, was for Showtime, it was 408,000 views for the night, which, considering the fighters that were on there, is kind of low. That was, you see a lot of ratings for who is it? HBO, who's usually tends to be around the high. The high 6 figures to at least breaking 1 million. But that's I'm guessing that's really more or less because of Golovkin and certain fighters like that. But also who fought on on the day before was Adonis Stevenson. He of course knocked out his opponent Thompson, who surprisingly did really well. Not surprisingly to the fact that I didn't think he was going to do it. I'm sorry, Thomas Williams Jr. I'm sorry, who did kind of well. He was undefeated going into the fight, I believe, and gave Adonis some good work. And it's for this reason that I don't think so highly of him as a lightweight fighter, is because, he's got the power to just erase all the mistakes he's done before. And boy, it was a vicious knockout in the 4th round. Right hook, landed square on the jaw, put Williams flat on his face. So congratulations, but come on, let's bring some notoriety to you and get somebody good in there. Now, speaking of ratings, the numbers for Terrence Crawford and Victor Postol pay-per-view had came in, and it is to go as expected. I mean, I think the one thing for this fight was, the fact that it was somewhat 50-50, but the main thing that just about every fan agreed on was or at least that they were asking, was why was this on pay-per-view? And with that, it also goes, well, the pay-per-view numbers aren't going to be good. And I think Bob Arum expected it, because I mean I think he says his hand was forced because HBO wouldn't pay for it, and man, I don't know why they wouldn't pay for this, but I don't know, maybe there's just a budget that they're on. I really don't know the full extent to that whole fiasco with HBO and, you know, what they can pay for and what they can't. But I've been stalling you guys for a little bit, so let's just get into these numbers. It's rumored that the pay-per-view numbers were through 47 to 50,000 orders. Pretty damn low. And I guess you can't really laugh at Gennady Golovkin anymore for making $150K on his first pay-per-view. I mean, which in retrospect now is not so bad, considering that was, you know, a foreign fighter. And here you have a U.S. fighter on his first pay-per-view, a really decent one, maybe even better as far as skill set. Well, probably definitely as far as skill set with Gennady Golovkin. But as you see, he's not as promoted, or not promoted as well as Golovkin. And what my main thing I was really upset with through this fight was the fact that this fight wasn't really promoted at all. I didn't see a single commercial on television for this fight. HBO hardly talked about it. It was only on their own boxing programs that they actually talked about it. And, you know, I thought before, when it was Pacquiao Bradley, of just how shitty the promotion of it was due to, Pacquiao's, anti-gay comments leading into the fight. But no, man, I mean, this was damn near promoted the same exact way, or the lack of promotion was just about the same. And that's what kind of gets me mad, though, is, for one, you're going to put this on pay-per-view, and two, you're just not even going to try to sell it? Like, they really did Terrence Crawford wrong that way. And that's, I think that's kind of fucked up. And I would be, if I was Terrence Crawford, I'd have a little talk with, not even Bob Arum, I would have a talk with HBO. Because it's like, come on. Like, you guys know I'm probably one of the best fighters you have on your lineup. And y'all can't even get me, like, some commercial time. Like, and then on the behalf of Bob Arum, you can't get me on, like ESPN First Take, or, some type of sports show on Fox Sports, some type of appearance. I mean, I did see him on ESPN's, on their Spanish network, which is kind of strange. Not strange, but it was just odd to, really just witness, just to have him consistently being translated. But still, man, there could have been a better job of even talking about this fight. And it's a shame, of course, that this had to be on pay-per-view, but still, like, come on. And now, last thing I wanted to get into depth, that is, was this ongoing rumor mill that surrounds Danny Garcia. Now, Danny Garcia is rumored to be closing in on a fight with Andre Berto for September, I believe. Now, before these rumors are they're saying it's almost a close deal, so I would say maybe it's a little bit more than a rumor. But before, these talks were mentioned, Danny Garcia was in headlines through a possible bout with Manny Pacquiao. Now, we had a rebuttal through Bob Arum saying that he's never even talked to Danny Garcia, and he has no fucking idea where he gets that idea. He's never talked to Al Heyman about it. It was really only Adrian Broner that they were seriously considering. And, lo and behold, a week later, Danny Garcia is mentioned. And like I said, Bob Arum says he has no idea what that came from and just couldn't believe it. And along with those ties of being mentioned with Manny Pacquiao, it was rumored that Danny Garcia had turned down an offer of $3 to $4 million to fight Manny Pacquiao. And along with this came a pretty decent backlash against Danny Garcia, especially with the talks of Berto rising, saying that, why would you fight a lesser fighter for lesser money, and still talk about, how Manny Pacquiao's $4 million isn't enough for you. And then they even go on through this past weekend saying that they want 50-50. Like if they say they'll take $4 million, if Manny Pacquiao will take $4 million. And this is, words by Angel Garcia, who, for me, can't give a decent interview for shit. He's incoherent through and through, and he'll never offer you anything informative in an interview. And it surprises me that people even still ask him anything. And I don't understand how Danny Garcia still has him even talking on his behalf. I would be embarrassed if my father goes out saying, why fight elite guys when you can fight a Salka? With a straight-ass face. Would a straight face tell you why it's okay to not fight the top guys? And to top all this off with all this bullshit comes the cherry. It was confirmed by Danny Garcia's own Instagram, where he has a screenshot of Bob Arum's comments that I had pretty much paraphrased, of him not having any clue of or any type of mention of Danny Garcia with Manny Pacquiao. And he has captioned under this video, or under this photo, that, I just made it up just for to give the haters something to talk about. Here, let me actually find the actual quote, because you're probably thinking I made that up, but I'm dead ass serious. He actually said, come on. Okay, here it is. I was never offered the Pac-Man fight. Me and Pops, Angel Garcia, reacted off a rumor to give my haters something to talk about. I'm a champion, I duck nobody. If the fight was offered, best believe I will beat him. Until then, keep lining them up one at a time. I mean, first of all, the last two sentences were just didn't even make any sense. I'm a champion, I duck nobody. If a fight was offered, best believe I beat him. Well, no. There's steps to that. First of all, if a fight was offered, you're not just going to beat him. First of all, you'd work out that offer and hopefully not go through the bullshit of saying that, I need 32, 60 million, whatever, some way to price yourself out like you imaginarily did before. I mean, can you believe that? This fool created his own headlines? Unbelievable. Ah, man, and you give this guy a WBC title and his head just balloons. And it's a shame, because, like, as a person, like, Danny is a really cool dude. And it's just through this fucking politicking that he does, which makes me fucking hate him. I mean, I already didn't like his ass for, you know, claiming so much shit for, you know, beating an old Eric Morales. Man, this fool is something else. Alright, we're on the closing minutes of this podcast, so let me at least get a shout out for the actual fights coming up this weekend. Andre Ward will be facing off Alexander Brand in the Oracle Arena in Oakland, California. Hopefully looking to take his last tune-up fight before facing Sergey Kovalev in November, which we're all hoping are keeping our fingers crossed that no injury comes out of this fight. Everyone turns out okay. And basically what's really to be looking out here is, you know, how Andre Ward looks, you know. Expecting him to be sharp. Now remember, this opponent is a little less of a competition than Chilemba was for Kovalev, so it may be pretty short work, or it may just be maybe a little bit longer with just a masterclass showing. So just really just a matter of how sharp Andre Ward looks out there through the fight. But other than that, that's about it for me, guys. It's getting kind of late. I did a long workout, and it's time to get my ass to bed. So I'm out. Keep your hands up. Peace.